me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now, because it's the place that it all goes down. Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now, because it's the place that it all goes down.
Shout out Young Swish.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sit Down with Malik Wright morning show. I'm Daniel Almeida. We got Tim Andrews here. We got Malik in a second. And as always, this show is presented by the Right Way Sports Network. And we got ourselves a big show to talk about, right? We got some topics like the New England Patriots on Sunday Night Football had a game against the Ravens. We had an interesting boxing fight, I will say, took place on Friday. And we had the Cincinnati Bengals look like a playoff team. But what do you know? They are, as Zach Taylor said, not in playoff status, so they are out of the playoffs. But they had a good win, and there's a lot to talk about with recent reports of, Adam Schefter, Tom Pelissero coming out and saying that Zach Taylor is probably not going anywhere, right? Those were the reports. The reports hinted at potential moves to be made in the offseason to, quote-unquote, beef up the defensive line, and these were the reports that were out there about the Cincinnati Bengals. These were the reports that we're supposed to take as fully true. And there's a lot to discuss because there's been a lot of turmoil this past couple of weeks, and there's been a lot of turmoil this entire season. But that's, I think, where we should definitely start this, right? This was a game against the Miami Dolphins where the beginning, it was looking a little rough, right? 17-14 heading into the half. You have a backup quarterback in Quinn Ewers, who was, albeit a backup quarterback, but he was looking good in spurts. And then you had the Bengals finally kicking into gear on a hot Sunday day, and they came out and they dominated the Miami Dolphins in the second half, something that they should have done. And now they're sitting at 5-10, 2 games left in the season, out of the playoff race. But hey, they won a game, right? So I think it's important to start out with this conversation. I guess I kind of want to get your thoughts, Tim, on the reports that came out that Zach is probably staying. Zach is probably here, and how the coaching staff is well recognized in the locker room, and how this Bengals coaching staff, meaning Zach Taylor, reportedly not going anywhere. What's your thoughts on those reports about him staying next season?
It's just first of all, good morning, everybody. As we sit here, as whether you're a Bengals fan, whether you're just a fan of the NFL and you just like drama or the recency bias of, the front office, let's be real here. I could care less about Zach Taylor being here.
Yep.
If you are going to move forward with him, I don't take a lot of shit from yesterday. You just so happen to look like the 2021 version of the Cincinnati Bengals and decide to put up 45 points after putting up a goose egg when it mattered. I said this a few shows ago. The worst thing that could ever happen was the Bengals sitting here and winning games or winning out the rest of the schedule and having a mid-teens to 20s pick.
Yeah.
This shit makes me sick. It does, because you see the potential of the team and you see when there is plays dot up. Now, I will say this. Yesterday, 407 total yards, averaged 6.7 yards per play. Joe Burrow looked efficient yesterday, 26-33. 4 yards per rush from the offense. No turnovers. And in the red zone, you were as efficient as could be, 6 for 6. All of that shit is great. It really is. But fuck all of that. Seriously. Like I'm not gonna lie to you. You got to the point yesterday where we're at a point at wanting the quality product that was put on the field versus us not doing anything with it when it mattered the most. And that's the problem that I have. You look like a playoff team against and the defense was still ass. Let's keep it a buck. If I'm correct, they had 389 yards of total offense yesterday, and they also averaged 6.7 yards per play. That's still an issue. There's going to be the looking at it from a glass half full instead of half empty, type of outlook on things. And I really, it's still problems. There's still holes. With Zac Taylor being here, the best thing that can happen is just to, go off of, I guess, some of the points that you might have as a fan is we still need to bolster up the offense or bolster up the defense.
Yep.
You still need to have the consistency on special teams as far as flipping the field. And then as far as Zac being more creative with play calling. And I think when you take those all into account, it makes up for a team that is competitive.
Yep.
But there's still the belief factor. I think Joe Burrow could run the fucking offense on his own. I think honestly the defense yesterday showed the ability, as they have the last three games, the ability to create turnovers. But what are we really talking about?
Yeah. And to add on to that point, this team showed signs of life, right? And that's cool. They did the same shit last year. And that's one of my problems. We had the same conversation heading into the end of the season where they needed to rattle off wins. They did it against Dallas, and what do you know? On prime time, everybody's happy. Joe Burrow, Ja'Marr Chase are happy. They go into Tennessee, right? Tennessee game. What did they do? The defense turned it around. They beat a backup quarterback, and they won. They went into Cleveland, and they won. This is the same shit. This is the same thing as last year, and to the point of they need to bolster up the defensive line that was in the report. Of course, this team has a lot of holes. The defensive line yesterday, while Myles Murphy looked good, this team goose egg in sacks. 0 sacks. This team still has a problem not getting pressure. And obviously I'm nitpicking, but these are the problems that you're going to have to address in the offseason. But it still doesn't absolve your team of going 4-10 and starting the season 4-10. So this was a good win. It was good to see Joe Burrow happy. It was good to see Joe Burrow in the press conference and in the locker room smiling, Ja'Marr Chase in the locker room smiling. But that's what a win does.
I try to wake up and be as positive as possible. And yesterday, I didn't smile one time during that game. I know that sounds really negative, and I'm not trying to be. But if you look at the Ravens doing exactly what we needed them to do, if we would have beat them and they turn around and they lost last night to the Patriots, this is exactly playing out how we would have hoped for it to be coming down to the end of the season. But it didn't happen that way. I at least would have had liked half of that offense from yesterday to show up to Paycor when they played the Ravens. It didn't happen. You're looking at a team now where we're going to catch a groove. There's going to be explosive plays. You have your three-headed monster back healthy, and looked every bit of the product that we expected when you spent that type of money in the offseason, just for it to go to waste and sit here and see possibly the Ravens somehow, some way possibly squeak in. But with how Pittsburgh played yesterday, I'm not surprised. And congratulations to the Pittsburgh Steelers doing exactly what they're supposed to do. That shit yesterday, this is the worst spot that you could actually hope for as a Bengals fan, to sit here at the end of the season with 3 very much winnable games and come away with a pick at number 20. Now you won just enough games to sit here and not put yourself in the top 10, but you lost enough games to sit here and enjoy pina coladas on the beach while your feet are in the sand.
Yeah.
Shit's, bro, whatever.
Yeah, and just kind of wrapping this up too, one of the things that I think is valuable, especially for the fan base, when you look around the league, I think it's important to gain perspective, because I see a lot of people after the reports came out saying, well, does this mean I can't feel a certain way? No, hell no. And the reason why I say that is look around the league and look at certain fan bases. The Baltimore Ravens, what did they do? They went out on prime time and they lost. They are in every right valid to feel how they feel. And you know what they're saying? You know what every Ravens fan is saying? Harbaugh played his last game in Baltimore yesterday. That's what they're saying. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for as good as they started out the season, you know what they're saying? Todd Bowles is a mediocre head coach and you need better. That's what other fan bases are saying. And just because a report came out does not mean you have to feel a certain way. You can still look at this team objectively. The same thing we're saying about the defensive line, how the defensive line needs to be improved, how you probably need another safety to replace Geno Stone. You can say the same exact thing about any part of this organization, and you are right to feel that way. So this game, it was nice to see them put up 40, 45 points, but this is what you do with an offense like this. This was what is expected with a great team, or supposedly great team, that you've got with the Bengals. So
this is after yesterday, the first thing that popped in my head was, this is the type of shit that saves Zac Taylor's job. These type of just pointless performances where now the half, glass half full instead of half empty outlook on it from the front office is going to be, see what we can do when we sit here and we're healthy and we're capable. It's too late for that. Mm-hmm. It's too late to sit here and have that outlook when you've known that these same issues that you just pointed out have been the problem for the last 2-3 years, and you haven't done shit about it. And the players that you did end up picking, they've made strides, but it's not enough to sit here and have you in a conversation of AFC Championship game, which is the expectation. I know it is for me when I'm at home, when I think about the type of quarterback we have, the type of, the type of running game that is able to be established when you actually commit to it. The takeaways from the defense, that's all you hope for with having a quarterback like Joe Burrow, is having an opportunistic type of defense. And they still gave up almost 400 yards of offense yesterday. Yeah, the score looked good. Cool. Still gave up 21 points to a backup quarterback. I don't care about yesterday. I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be negative. I don't care about yesterday. I'm glad to see T in his final form sitting there and balling out. Chase Brown, hey, appreciate you, my boy. Helped my fantasy team yesterday. Thank you. Jamar Chase still making 50-50 balls. Looks, 60-40, 80-20. That's cool. But other than that, I could care less about yesterday. But, I mean, it is what it is. We're just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, and Andrea posed a great question. I think that's kind of like a good discussion. It's a lost year. How do we avoid a fourth next year?
I mean, I don't know if you wanted to add.
No, yeah, I was just.
I'll say, we all can talk about our grievances, and I think all of our grievances with the organization is justified, and where we stand with the organization and how we feel like when we speak, it might fall on deaf ears. Let me just say this. I think for you take any of us and you put us in the front office, this doesn't have to be a long rebuild process or reload process, whatever you want to, call it. It doesn't have to be that. But because of how the family operates, and I say the family, and I feel like when I'm saying the family, it feels like a mob family, right? Because of how they operate, because they're loyal to their own to a fault sometimes, well, you have to deal with the constraints of what you got. So I think that's why the question being posed is, how can the Bengals move forward with Zac Taylor? Make no mistake about it. This is not me, Malik Wright, waving the white flag. This is not even Malik Wright saying, hey, Zac Taylor won against the Miami Dolphins yesterday. All the issues absolved, because if I still had it my way, Zac Taylor and company, notice I said in company, would have to answer for this season, because this is a lost season. You're out of the playoffs before, with 2 weeks left to go in the season. You have a defense that is now starting to show signs of life, even though they're dead last in almost every single category. For people that are saying, Al Golden, for instance, right? Because that's the topic we haven't had. Because I always say, I said it about Lou Anarumo. You can't have the Lou Anarumo conversation if you're not having the Zac Taylor conversation. You can't have the Al Golden conversation if you're not having the Zach Taylor conversation. But it seems like the Bengals are in blame mode. They're trying to figure out somebody we can blame, position coaches, coordinators, yada, yada, yada. I'll say this. You know, at the end of the day, right, those that are hanging their hat on, hey, the defense has started to show flashes, right? The defense had a banner day yesterday where they pitched almost a second half shutout before the starters got pulled. That's what we wanted to see from Al Golden, right? The folks that are saying that. So if that right there was enough for Al Golden to return as defensive coordinator, if that was enough for you to signal your faith in Al Golden, well, why wasn't the Tennessee Titans game last year where the Bengals defense had 7 turnovers enough for 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 to stay put? Because how I see it is you ripped up the entire process, the entire product, in order to basically save face and change pillars. But the defense is worse this year. Maurice, you could pull that stat for me correctly if I'm wrong or not. I know people say the Bengals defense was poor last year, and it was. But I think last year they finished, was it like not middle of the pack, but like mid-20s or something like that?
Mid-20s.
They finished mid-20s defense?
Yeah.
This defense is dead last. So for the folks that say, hey, this can't get better, this can't get worse, well, it can get worse. And there are folks out there, and I listen, I'm a big inward looker. I'm huge at looking at myself in the mirror. I'm huge on finding ways to move forward. There are folks out there that are really sitting out there and they're saying it's 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's fault why the defense, right, played so poorly to start the year. You have real people, like people that are genuinely serious, that are still blaming a former coach as to why players have just started to play correctly the last 4 weeks. What are we doing? What is training camp for? What is preseason for? Right? What is all that for? You know, I'm very, very happy that Myles Murphy has started to show what you had hoped to see. But make no mistake about it. And this is coming from a guy that, again, when the Bengals drafted Myles Murphy, I was probably excited more than the next person. I remember doing a show with Joe Goodbear, and we were discussing it, and he was discussing how he felt like this was a project. And he felt like, you know, this was going to be a guy that was going to take be a work in progress. And I said, hey, you know what? Clemson's defenses last year, right? It wasn't just him that struggled his final year. It wasn't just Myles Murphy that struggled his final year at Clemson. It was also Brian Brees, but he still wound up getting drafted by the Saints, right? The point why I'm saying all this is Myles Murphy was always a project. He was always a project. He was never coming in as a rookie replacing Sam Hubbard as the starter. Sam Hubbard was coming off of one of his better seasons. Sam Hubbard was also one of the best edge run defenders in the National Football League. So you're replacing, and this comes from a guy that was sitting in a suite each and every single Sunday watching these games, saying, hey, put the guy in there who you drafted, put the guy in there with limited pass rush reps, put him in there over Sam Hubbard because Sam Hubbard lacked the juice in the pass rush department. And they found ways to toy and get Myles Murphy in the game at points, but it didn't show anything. His second year, he starts the year on IR.
Yeah.
He starts the year on IR. So that allowed others on the defensive line, guys like Sam Hubbard, who was still a starter for the Bengals, guys like Joseph Ossai, who the Bengals were hoping they would see something out of, to jump him. Now you have the third year. And by the way, when Myles Murphy came back from injury from the IR, he still looked slow out there. Like any athlete would look coming off of an injury. You don't trust yourself. The reason why I'm bringing all this stuff up, you're probably saying, Malik, how does this all tie in? Because I think people have a short-term memory.
Yeah.
I think folks have a short-term memory. Now you're in your third year of a pass rusher who needed to gain reps, who also needed to gain confidence, right? And also needed the game to slow down for him. And now he's starting to put it all together. Let's stop blaming coaches and being like, hey, you know what? If Myles Murphy started from the get-go, Myles Murphy would have been shown this. That's not true. Because I remember a Minnesota Vikings game when he did get the start and he got pancaked several times. You see, on this show, I discuss the positives, but I also discuss the negatives, and I also try and bring everyone down to reality to a degree. Because again, it is my job, it is Daniel's job, it is Tim's job for us to tie everything together. I am happy for the player that Myles Murphy is becoming. It is everything you need to see, especially as you start to look forward for life without Trey Hendrickson. The second point to that, see the flashes that you're seeing in Myles Murphy, right?
Right.
Now slow down in your criticism of Shamar Stewart. Because when I watch Myles Murphy, when I watch Shamar Stewart, I see a lot of Myles Murphy. When Myles Murphy first started, I see a lot of when Myles Murphy first started. The game hasn't slowed down. The thinking too much out there, not being super confident. You know, when me and Shamar Stewart sat down, he talked about not necessarily having a plan when he pass rushed. This is also a guy that didn't get a full training camp because spent half of the training camp sitting out. But also, it's when you draft a rookie, and this is where it falls back on the organization. When you draft a rookie, right, it is your job, okay? It is your job to make sure that the rookie is learning from capable vets. The problem is, outside of Trey Hendrickson, you go down the long list of guys that guy could learn from. Well, it was limited. Ossai, right? Myles Murphy, Cedric Johnson, they're all kind of in the same boat where they're trying to make a name for themselves. They're trying to, hey, I could be the next guy in the Bengals. They don't have a time to mentor Shamar Stewart. They view Shamar Stewart as the guy that's coming in saying, hey, I'm coming to compete against you. Cam Sample, all those guys are in one big melting pot. Now, it seems like Myles Murphy is ascending. It seems like Myles Murphy is ahead of the pack now. But that's an organizational flaw. And I had a one Twitter user and me going at it, not even going at it. We were just disagreeing yesterday. He's like, well, it's Lou's fault that guys like Chris Jenkins and McKinley Jackson didn't get reps. I said, well, that's not true. McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins had a couple of starts last year, right? Due to the injury of Sheldon Rankins. Well, they should have never started over Sheldon Rankins. Try telling that to your employer who just gave Sheldon Rankins, what was it, a $20 million contract, something like that? Tim, that's like me saying, hey, you know what? Tim is on the show, okay? Tim is on the show, and we're going to pay Tim, let's say, $1 million a show.
Right.
And then I don't let Tim on the show. And I say, you know what? No, I'm going to let this other guy come on the show because he has more, he needs to get more experience. So did we just flush $1 million down the drain because you follow what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
To me, it was always going to be a maturation process with these guys. Players got to play. Coaches got to coach. And at the end of the day, the results speak for themselves. And you know what? The conversation not being had here, everybody's just looking to blame defensive coordinators, even though defensive coordinators delegate, right? If you're a defensive coordinator, you have a linebacker coach. Your linebacker coach, guess what? You give it to your linebackers coach, right? Your defensive coordinator, you give the linebacker coach, you let the linebackers coach work with the linebackers. The defensive line coach, you let them work with the defensive line. We're not talking about the job Jerry Montgomery has done. Why isn't this a Jerry Montgomery conversation versus Marion Hobby conversation? Because Marion Hobby was the pass rush specialist. Marion Hobby was the guy, the coordinator, the defensive line orchestrator of Saxonville. Why isn't that the conversation? Why is the conversation, well, a defensive coordinator didn't do his, what? Because a player wasn't coming into his own because a player dealt with injuries? It's not up to coaches if players show up to camp overweight, all because they didn't like a little bit of bad news that they weren't starting. Again, I choose to fall back. I choose to fall back on things. I choose not to. But guys, I promise you, the questions that you guys raise up on this show that you typically ask me, I usually ask. I was asking a lot about the Myles Murphy thing last year. I was asking about it. You know what I was told? He's hurt still. He's still coming back. Came back way too early. The game hasn't slowed down for him. I asked about the Jordan Battle thing. You want to know why? Because I'm an Alabama Roll Tide fan. And I know what Jordan Battle could bring to a defense if he has the reps. But guess what? Wasn't shown for. It was a mind-boggling decision when Jordan Battle wasn't a starter to me. I tie all that in, guys, because I think it's important to look forward without placing blame and acting as if, because the one thing I'm not going to do, I'm not going to be one of those people that say, hey, you know what? The defense has started to play good. By the way, the last month of the next season, so forget all the rest of the season. The defense has just started to play good the last month of the season. And if we had this from the get-go, this is what the result would have been going back to their rookie season. Well, we all know that's not true, right? So the question is, how do we move forward with Zac Taylor? Let's start off with this. We move forward, we stop blaming coaches in situations that are no longer a part of the process. Looking inward. When you consistently place blame in life, guess what? It robs you of the ability to look inward at yourself, which steals away the opportunity for true growth because you're constantly looking for other people to blame. Just say, I didn't have my shit together to start my NFL career. Just say I had to learn to be a pro. Not all players come in ready to rock like a Ja'Marr Chase, like a Joe Burrow, like a T. Higgins. Is that a hot take? Because that's the truth of it. The moment we start looking at these rookies and we start saying, you know, to ourselves, there might be a learning curve. You're not the first overall pick. You're not the 5th overall pick. You're not going to come in right away and hit the ground running. There's going to be a maturation process. The sooner we could put these guys into the light that we expect. Guys like Amarius Mims did hit the ground running, right? Shamar Stewart was what? He's a 16th overall pick? 17, 16?
Yeah.
Myles Murphy was what? The 27th?
Yeah.
Damn near a second-round pick. Jordan Battle, 3rd-round pick. Guys go through learning curves, and that's okay. See, here's the problem in Cincinnati. Tim, Daniel, can I say the quiet part out loud?
What's that?
Because the organization fails to add the right pieces in the offseason via free agency, via acquisition, via trades, you put way too much on the rookies that you draft. And when the rookie don't show up from week 1, we start to dose it in flames because we're like, this guy sucks. This guy didn't show up. No, it's not always that. It could just be this guy was thrown into the fire right away. You're expecting a rookie in Shamar Stewart to come in and help one of the worst ranked defenses last year. And we're shocked, like, why hasn't the game showed down? This is a dude also that you drafted, by the way, which I would probably say, there were some other pieces who I would have liked, right? I understand why, the intangibles, the measurables. You still drafted him knowing that was a project. You drafted him knowing he was a project. So when the project doesn't start right off the bat, week 1, we're shocked. Why are we shocked? Myles Murphy, project, right? Zac Taylor had to find a place where he was going to be on a defense. Now he has. Myles Murphy's now coming into that project. We place too much expectations on rookies coming out the gate. And guess what? You should, right? Because you want these guys to be good. But when they're allowed to have bad games, they're allowed to have bad months, they're allowed to have bad seasons. Just because a guy doesn't come out the gate having 2 sacks his rookie game doesn't make him a bust. But that's a management issue because you thrust these guys into action right away saying you don't get a learning curve. You need to start right away. No matter what your PFF grade says, your PFF grade might be a 41. We get too much wrapped up in the numbers. Oh, Chris Jenkins, he graded out a 41. He graded out a McKinley Jackson's a 25 on PFF. They're rookies. That's where any comparable organization says, you know what? Maybe we need to add a good amount of vets so we don't put too much on these guys. So that way they can actually mature through the process. Because guess what? If they were that ready to go, if they were that elite, if they were that ready to make a huge impact, they'd probably be going in the 1st round. They probably go in top 10. They probably go in top 5. But you're asking third rounders and fourth rounders to make immediate impacts on piss poor defense to make up for the fact that you don't want to spend money. I'm sorry.
There you
You
go.
haven't spent money
There you go.
since 2021 on the defense. Shame on you. That's an organizational failure, Tim.
That's exactly what I was about. I'm glad that you just said that shit because I'm over here the entire time you're talking. I was like, I hope he hits that. I hope he hits that point. The problem with, and I think with the NFL in general, is that because of those fair few guys, rookies, starting out so hot and making such large impacts on other teams, we as fans have gotten spoiled with that, phenomenon. Go back to, even the 2010s, early 2000s of guys getting drafted in the first round. You had a veteran in front of them that was able, even if they didn't want to be a mentor, was able to at least hold a clipboard and watch how things transpired, to make mistakes in practice, to sit here and get maybe some garbage time in regular season games, just to get a feel for how fast the NFL game is. Nobody up here today or watching today, unless you are a former NFL player, knows exactly how ferocious the NFL is, how fast it is, how quickly you have to take in coverages. If you're a quarterback, how quickly you have to learn with just a 40-second play clock, but really, you only got 15, 20 seconds to digest what coverage it is, whether it's man or zone, then turning around, setting protections, then turning around and still having to look back sometimes at your wristband just to know what the hell the play is. And then going through progressions when the play is when it's in play. That's a lot of shit to take in, especially as a rookie coming from the college game where it's kind of cut the field in half. Your assignment, do your 111. It's a lot that goes into it. And I think that's a problem that the Bengals have, is that we don't create any room for error for rookies. Like you said, you expect them to come in and be impactful from day one when you had a Mike Hilton, when you had a DJ Reader, when you had a Sam Hubbard, when Trey was healthy, when you had a Jessie Bates, you had the opportunity to have these first round picks. If you are going to sit here and be mediocre, you could at least have these 17th overall, 20th overall, 22nd overall picks come in and just go ahead and bump their head. Now you didn't need them to be perfect on a defense that's already ass. You have to have, your wide receiver 3 come in and learn on the fly and expect Tyler Boyd type of production when you don't know how to necessarily get off of press coverage against who's a number 3 corner on an NFL team, might be the best corner on the college team. It's a different ball game. It's not the same thing. And that's the problem that I have with the front office, is that you just cheap as hell. You cheap as shit. And then you expect to have guys who are babies essentially come in and play all-star level, or that's what you need from those specific positions. And that's why you draft them, because you saw that there was a need, but they don't have that type of time.
And the one thing I keep thinking about too, I saw, well, if Lou showed the front office what they had, and guys like Miles Murphy, who I think got opportunities, Joseph Ossai got opportunities, those guys got opportunities, then guess what? They would have used their board to draft accordingly. Okay, let's say this, let's say this. Don't you know that they have practice film that me, Daniel, Tim will never have access to?
Never.
If the guy was truly going out there dominating, by the way, he wasn't. Don't you think they would have said, hey, you know what? This guy's going to come on strong. This guy's going to be X, Y, Z. No, he made extreme growth this past year. I say all that to say, hindsight is 2020. You go back and you redo the process, right? The Bengals have a type, right? It's like us dating, right? We all have types, or people that interest us to a degree. Well, they have a type. Their type are defensive ends that are 6'5", that weigh 260 plus pounds, because they think that you need to hold up in we think that they need to, we don't know if you can hold up in the AFC North. Because I look at, if you want to fix the defense, right? Let's say, for instance, do you think the Bengals would have did the draft differently, right? With guys like 𝗏𝗏𝗏 Starks going right after, right? 𝗏𝗏𝗏 Starks was looked at as a a prospect that was going to be an absolute demon in the NFL. He was looked at as one of the most pro-ready defensive backs. Well, there you cure your issue, right? You cure your issue from the safety spot because now you have a major hole at safety. Now you have to either overpay for a guy in free agency, which is, I don't know if there's a guy out there that you're saying, you know what, we're definitely doing that, or you have to pray that a Caleb Downs or a 𝗦𝗫𝗓𝗏 Ramsey falls to you. Like, you know, I look at this and I say to myself, hey, you know, they drafted Shamar Stewart because they didn't see what they needed to see out of Myles Murphy, Joseph Osai, Cedric Johnson, but also preparing for life out of Trey Hendrickson. Because in their mind, instead of acting like a organization that says, hey, you know, we want to get the most out of the talent that we have on the defensive line, they're like, you know what? Trey, you want to leave? Okay. We're going to drive Shamar Stewart. Explosive, fast, physical, a menace. We're going to do that. So fast forward to where we are now, Bengals defense being last, we can't be shocked when the defense is playing the way it's playing. Shamar Stewart coming off of a PCL tear, right? Which was obviously news. Me and Shamar text, but I don't ask him, hey, do you have a PCL tear? Like, is your knee tore up? I don't, more of a friendship. And the fact of the matter is, hey, we can't be, I guess my expectations are very limited of what I expect to see. Guy comes off of an injury like that. It's always going to take, Tim, you're an athlete. It's going to take, what, a month, couple weeks to fully get your groove back.
Yeah.
And this was his first game back from an injury because I know he wanted to play in Miami so bad because this is his hometown. This is his home state where he's from. He's from Florida. Well, the returns are probably not going to show forth until next year. You're probably looking at maybe Shamar Stewart putting up a dud year when it comes to sacks. You're probably not going to see him enter the stat highlight. You might see a couple tackles for loss, but it's very clear he's not out there for every single snap. It's also the part of getting back in playing shape. Guys, it's 2 games left in the season. We're probably not going to see real results from Shamar Stewart until next year. So guess what?
Mid of next year.
Mid of next year. So guess what? The conversations are going to grow loud. The folks saying that, you know what, they're not, they drafted a bust, that all those conversations are going to grow loud. And I hope he uses that motivation as fuel this offseason to better his craft, to get in playing shape, to be ready to go from the opening jump, because that guy was a guy that was dominating, right, in training camp. I mean, how many highlights did you see of Shamar Stewart jumping over offensive line, swatting passes down, would have been sacks on Joe Burrow, but can't touch the quarterback because it's the offseason. Mm-hmm. That guy was truly a menace, but now it's very clear he's not fully 100% healthy. He's not fully 100% confident. The game hasn't slowed down for him. Also, he's not in playing shape. That's not going to happen in 2 weeks. So slowing down expectations until next year is important. But I say all that to say, you know, the following year, and Tim, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. I know you got a lot you want to say.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. You wonder, would they have done things differently now knowing what they have in Myles Murphy? I can't answer that conversation. I can't answer that question. But Tim, go ahead.
Hey, look, all right. I see. First of all, look, I've been over here holding my tongue. The Bengals have spent more. I see your comment.
My show.
Yeah, look. The Bengals spent money more in 2021 and 2025. They you need to go look at the track record that they have for the amount of money spent. The problem that I have is this: you're not putting your money in the right places. Okay, cool. You gave money to Jamar, you gave money to T, you gave an extension to Trey, and you signed TJ Slaton. The point that I'm making is this: I'm not necessarily worried at the fact that you spent a certain amount of money or a dollar bill on these players. The problem is that if you didn't bring anything in to help the younger players that you're leaning on so heavily for, let's just say, this season. Yeah, you spent more money than the Rams in 2025, but the difference between the Bengals and the Rams are that the Rams developed the players that they already had, and the pieces that they brought in and spent money on were additions to help or to bolster. Those are proven talents to go with the guys that now can bump their heads a little bit and show their flashes, and we not hurt as much. We don't have the room for error to have guys just show flashes. We need, I'm trying to learn not to cuss. We need guys to have opportunity to sit here and have growth pains. It's okay that we spent money, but you didn't bring anything to bolster the secondary. You have nothing but babies back there. You had CTB, you had DJ Turner, you had Jordan Battle, and you had the one guy, Geno Stone, the one guy who's a veteran in that room, has been playing like piss poor shit outside of 2 games this year. Give me a break on sitting here and telling me that we've spent money. You really haven't spent any money because the best GMs, Veach, Roseman, those guys spend money to bring in proven veteran talent to go with the young team that they have, even if it's for a year or 2 years. You don't have the room for error. This year would have been a perfect opportunity to run back that whole philosophy of the free agency frenzy that we had of 2020. You brought in guys who were sitting here and were contributors on teams that you knew had possibilities at making playoff runs. On top of having the younger guys come in and just run with their ears pinned back and know that I got help on that side. Who does Myles Murphy have on the other side that's supposed to help him? Joseph Ossai, who's a young guy who's also needed time as well, made mistakes as well. I saw, and this is just something that I saw during the off season, was a lot of guys were sitting here and watching tape of other players, which is common. I know I did when I was playing. I watched tapes of releases and also dropbacks and of different stances from the pocket, of ways of how to have a checklist of how to do things before the play clock went down to 5 seconds. Okay, cool. Myles Murphy is watching highlights of other pass rushers, which made me think, well, what the hell have you learned from the coaching staff to create a bag to have when you're here? How much did you work on that? Shamar Stewart sitting out for the entire offseason, essentially, then coming in and us expecting to see, at least 5 sacks this season to create the pressures that he's had. These are guys who have families at home too. You are just getting your feet wet. You're going against all pros. You're going against Pro Bowl guys who played 10 years. This ain't an 18-year-old lining up across from you, and your physical presence is just overpowering to him. You need time. We didn't have that luxury. Do y'all get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We don't have that luxury. We don't have, and I'm going to be honest, I'm going to say it because I think you said it. We don't have the coaches who sit here and implement those type of philosophies and type of bags to the players and give them the tools necessary in order to win their one-on-ones just yet. Guys, I feel personally,
you mean from a pass rush standpoint? You're talking about pass rush?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think they're in a position where they're learning as fast as they should, and they're learning on the fly against people who have 3 kids at the crib that they have to feed. This isn't easy to line up on a Sunday or a Thursday or a Monday night. No, it's not. And then you're asking guys to produce at this. Just go ahead.
So a couple things I want to touch on. So when we talk about the players that they bring in and how they spend their money, Daniel, feel free to jump in here at any point in time.
Yeah.
So it's such an easy conversation to go in and talk about the I would say the lack of scouting or the lack of. So for me, I think when we talk about bringing in an outside voice, I think that's important because I think it's clear you don't have guys that know the talent around the National Football League. Let's start there. Before you say, Malik, what are you talking about? They do know. They obviously know the talent around the National Football League. I got to push back on that a little bit. It feels like they know the talent that they know. And what I mean by that is the Bengals have a weird tendency to only bring in players via free agency that have had success against them. It's very strange.
Yep.
Very strange. Sheldon Rankins had 2.5 sacks against them, right? They brought him in as a prized free agent. Texans-Bengals game, Joe Burrow starting in Paycor towards the end of the season. Texans beat us. Sheldon Rankins had 2.5 sacks on Joe Burrow. They wound up signing that guy to a deal in the offseason and didn't pan out here in Cincinnati. Geno Stone picked off Joe Burrow. How many times, Daniel? Twice? Was it
At
twice?
least for sure that one time in the end zone.
But being from Baltimore picked him off, and that was the limited amount of resources that they spent. Now, obviously, TJ Slaton, but you could look at right there, that was a Jerry Montgomery signing because Jerry Montgomery came from Green Bay. He coached TJ Slaton. There isn't a lot of, hey, maybe we should go out there and sign this dude from the freaking, I don't know, Chargers. Maybe we should go out there and sign this dude from the freaking,
there's too many mob ties, personally.
Yeah, literally,
in my
it feels like
eyes.
it feels like there's too many, hey, guys that we know because they either had success against us or we've seen their game because it was a divisional game, an important game, and maybe that could translate. Like for me, it wouldn't shock me if Isaiah Rodgers was and he's not a free agent, but if he was a free agent, Isaiah Rodgers, the cornerback from the Vikings, who wound up having a monster day against the Bengals probably would make him a free agency priority and make a big deal out of that signing. It's weird. It's just very, very strange that sometimes they make those guys priority, which makes me think sometimes you don't have guys taking a bigger, bigger scope of a look on the NFL as a whole and potential free agents that can come in and help us for different reasons. I think what you could look at is you could say, hey, maybe we look at our divisional opponents. Maybe we look at pieces of let's say if you're actually saying we're not going to go out there and change anything. Maybe we should go out there and try to find guys that have had success against divisional opponents, against some of the top teams in the AFC, because that's what you're essentially trying to compete with, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm looking at a safety, I want a guy that kind of knows that has had success against guys like Mahomes or guys like Herbert or guys like Lamar, some of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League, not guys that just have had success against me. That's just, to Zim's point, Zim had brought up, Bengals should have went out there and they should have signed, what's the safety from Chicago now? That was a free agent.
Gardner Johnson?
No, Gardner Johnson.
CJ.
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. But I specifically asked when he was let go beforehand. This was 2 years ago. They said too much of a character issues, too much stuff going on. And you see that. You see that sometimes. There's a lot of extracurricular stuff going on, but that wasn't something that the organization was willing to take on. I asked about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, just not interested in him as a player. Mental makeup, and that was back when he was saying, Cincinnati would be kind of cool to go to, whatever. Had no interest in him because guess what? The friend of a friend of a friend told me this dude is, not it, right? To me, there's not enough concerted effort to say, hey, let's bring in guys that just have had success, right? Around the National Football League. Somebody said they do that, Malik, due to lack of scouts and laziness. I'm very aware. I'm very, very aware.
We spoke on that topic plenty of times.
There is a lot that goes in, but my point is, how can anything change if your process hasn't changed? How could we expect different from, if you're saying we're going to run it back with the same team, with the same team in the same situation and, the same coaches because we believe, then how do we expect the process to change, especially with the free agency defensive class that isn't really that impressive? There's a couple of names, guys like Jalen Phillips, who are going to be free agents, who I would personally have interest in. There are guys that I've found. I don't act to be like some, football savant, if you will.
Yeah.
But I watch a lot of football.
Yeah.
I sat on this show and was pounding the table for guys like Mike Gesicki. I was told Hayden Hurst was better than Mike Gesicki. From real Bengals fans, and people are like, "Oh, Hayden Hurst would give us."
And Hayden Hurst wasn't bad at all.
Well, they will look at the stats. They will look at the stats and be like, "Well, he hasn't had a great year." And I say, "Yes, look at every single tight end from Mike McDaniel. They don't know how to use him." Then he also went to Pittsburgh, and that didn't work out because he thought he was going to be in a starting role, but yet and still they brought in two other tight ends who he was sitting behind, or he was coming in on limited situations. Of course, his stats are going to be down, but Mike Gesicki will be perfect for the Bengals. 2 years later, he's a Bengal. I said, bring in Dalton Reisner. This guy's looking for a home. He's the perfect free. Go back when on the signing on the show before, when they first signed him. I said, Dalton Reisner is the perfect free agent guard for the Bengals. They said, why? I said, because I think he's a guy that's going to come in right away. He'll be instantly your best interior offensive lineman. Not a hot take now, right?
And he's played his ass off.
I said, he's a guy you could probably get for $2 to $3 million, which is their perfect bargaining price that they like to pay guys at. They don't like to pay big money. And he's a guy that's just looking for a home. Yeah. He's been with Denver. He's been with the Vikings, and nobody is committed long-term to him. Why? Oh, he must have character issues because there's a video of him and Brett Rypien yelling at each other on the sideline. Come on, that's enough. Offensive linemen get fired up. Guess what?
If you've never been on a football field.
Dalton Reisner comes in. He's instantly probably the best in Bengals interior offensive lineman. And now he should be in line for a new contract. And guess what? They'll probably be able to sign that guy for 2 years at that $3 million price. To me, like, I don't overthink these things. Noah Fant was an easy fit for me that made sense for the Bengals. Now, obviously, it sucks. He's had concussion this year. He's dealt with injuries.
Fumble issues.
He's had fumble issues, but he's filled in to that 𝗪𝗏𝗏 role pretty nicely. I think he was in line for a monster year, right? I think he was in line for a monster year before Joe Burrow went down. Yeah. I think him and Joe Burrow were finding the clicks. And people said, you know, I remember Dalton Risner and me talking. I said, have the Bengals reached out to you? Nope, they haven't, brother. Waiting on it. They finally did. Like sometimes
and be waiting too long.
Sometimes these things don't have to be these long, drawn-out processes, and then we have these knee-jerk reactions. Well, Dalton Risner came in the Cleveland game, and he just didn't look great.
No shit.
He was signed a week before. Like the process. And I'll give them the credit. Hold on, because in years past, their roster would be set going into the season, and they would not make any changes. At least they made a phone call to pick up the phone and say, you know what? 𝗬𝗢𝗟𝗓𝗏 is good. You know, what's the guy? Lucas Patrick is good, but we need to bring these guys in. Now, that's what you do. You go out there and listen, you try to add to your roster up until the last minute. That is what good football teams do. Damn, we're really dissecting the process of this. But the fact of the matter is, like, these things don't have to be tug and pull situations. These are guys that can come in right away and make impact if you allow them to, if you give them ample time to. Dalton Risner was an easy fit, right? Dalton Risner was an easy fit. Noah Fant was an easy fit. Mike Gesicki was an easy fit. These are guys that you don't have to overthink the process. And you have guys that are so talented, guys like Joe Goodberry, guys like Jake Liscow, guys like myself, guys like Daniel, guys like Evan McPhillips. There are so many guys that watch film around other players around the National Football League that, listen, I'm not asking to be a scout. I have no desire to be a scout. But if we're saying, hey, you should probably bring these guys in, right? Just maybe these guys could make an impact on your football team, because it's clear if it took you that long to bring a Dalton Risner in, it literally took a public outcry, me posting, hey, he's begging to be a Bengal. He literally commented on my TikTok, I'd love to be a Bengal.
His wife posting videos.
Like,
too. Yeah.
And you have a need there. At the very least, you have a depth issue there. Why not bring that guy in? Why not bring that guy in? Let's not overthink the process. The process doesn't have to be overthought. And guess what? There are going to be some free agents that come up this year, guys, that we're going to talk about, you know, that we're going to bring up. Somebody said all fans were asking for the free agents. No, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. I think that it became a popular conversation afterwards. But I don't mean to brag or act like I know it all, because I don't. But I was screaming the Mike Gesicki train for what, Daniel? 3 years? The Noah Fant train for 2 years, 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
The Dalton Risner train for years before he signed back with the Minnesota Vikings and became a free agent again. Throughout the entire offseason, you literally can go on this YouTube channel and find videos of me saying, sign Dalton Risner. He's the perfect free agent profile fit. You can find that. Listen, I don't mean to take a victory lap, but I'm going to take a victory lap on that, because that's not true. It's easy to say that now, hindsight's 2020, but that's just not true. The fact of the matter is, the product, right? The product at the end of the day hasn't materialized. And that's the conversation here. So the conversation now is, how do you move forward with Zac Taylor? Let's get back on track here. How do we move forward with Zac Taylor? So I have a question for you, Tim. What? Daniel, do you guys move on from Al Golden? Has he shown you enough to say, hey, that guy warrants another year? Because I struggle with that.
You want me to go?
You go, Daniel.
Go ahead.
Sure, in a nutshell, I would move off of him, but no, I'm going to say no. And the reason why is, like, bro, you just changed DCs, and I just don't know if it's a good look on Zac. I understand, listen, this is not an endorsement of Al Golden, but bro, this was your guy that you brought in. You are the one that hired him. So, and I struggle with this because I don't know if Zac has that type of pull around the league. I don't know if he's got the connections to go out and find a better defense coordinator. Who's he going to pull? And that's where I struggle with the Al Golden thing. I don't know if he's necessarily earned another year. But I look at this situation. You just gave him 1 year. If you're running it back with Zach, why would you not run it back with 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏? And I'm at the point now where do I feel like it would improve my team if I fired 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 or if I made a more concerted effort in free agency? And I do think that at this point right now, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, I'm not firing him. I'm not. I'm looking at free agency. I'm looking at the draft. That's where I'm looking at, because these are guys, for right or for wrong, these young guys that are playing better. Dax Hill is playing better. You got Myles Murphy playing better. You got your rookie linebackers. These are your guys, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, the two linebackers. Those were two guys that you wanted. I'm giving them another year. And for right or for wrong, and looking to the point that 𝗦𝗫 said, about the Rams and the Bengals, the one thing and the difference that she wasn't bringing up and other people don't bring up is their young guys perform. The Rams had Jared Verse perform, Byron Young perform, and they had guys in free agency that they went out and signed for little money, and those guys performed. The Bengals haven't had that. What free agent that they signed to a minimum amount of money has performed like a starter? I don't know, since Eli Apple, maybe. The Rams have what? Emmanuel Forbes, who the Bengals brought into the building, who is currently top 5, top 10 in pass deflection in the NFL. Emmanuel Forbes. That dude is top 5, top 10 in interceptions right now. That's a guy they pulled out of their ass and they gave him a few million and said, hey, you are a depth piece, but that guy has shown up. The Bengals haven't had that, and they need that. So I'm keeping 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. I'm giving him another shot because at the end of the day, this is Zac Taylor's ship. And if we're riding with Zac Taylor, you ride with him for another year. And I don't know if Zac Taylor would be better next year if he has to manage a new relationship with a new defensive coordinator. I don't know if he's got that in his wheelhouse. So I'm keeping 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, and I'm making a much more conservative effort in free agency. But what do you think, Tim?
I'll give him 1 more year. Why? Because I think this is the same. Honestly, I think this is the same shit that we were dealing with we were dealing with our previous. I'm having a brain fart.
Last year?
Yes, our previous DC Lou. This same shit that Lou was dealing with. You might have the right play calls in place, but you just might not have the right players. And it's not even necessarily about the right players, but it goes back to the conversation we were having earlier, Leak, was the ability to have guys be able to bump their heads, the room for error. You just didn't have that this year. And I'm looking at this free agency class coming up. I see 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 on here, Cole Holcomb, AJ Epinesa. You got Alex Anzalone. You got Larry Ogunjobi if you want to try to bring him back. Arden Key. You got guys who are proven to be productive, and they've played better than what the hell we got on our team right now. I would like to see Al, because he's called some good games, and I've seen flashes from the Patriots game even. Sometimes, like Leak said, players have to play and coaches have to coach. I might have the right play call in, but I know me as a quarterback, I will fuck up a play call because I didn't read the defense correctly, or I went against from the progressions that I had and went to my third option instead of just going with what was called. And sometimes you're just not in the right place and you don't make the right play. So would I give him 1 more year? Sure. But Al has had a tendency to possibly call the wrong shit sometimes. Shit. Quite frankly, the national championship game, leaving Jeremiah Smith on an island, that was insane. So there's been questions about him even before he came back to the NFL, but I would like to see him with some type of veteran, leadership on the team and have those young guys just play free. That's the best that's the best case scenario for me.
And one
DJ
thing,
Reader's a free agent again, like you said. Yeah.
One quick thing. Gary Jellison said, so do we give extensions to Dax and Turner and nickel dime them? What I'm going to say is
better stop nickel and diming
the Trey Hendrickson conversation as well. If Trey is not brought back, and people need to get this in their heads, this team is top 10 in cap. They've got the money. They do. So there doesn't need to be a thought process of just because they give Dax potentially a contract and give DJ Turner, because that's what I would do. I think those two are guys you've got to give extension to. Dax made a play yesterday. That was one of the most athletic plays I've seen this entire year. if you give those guys extensions, it doesn't mean your bank is broke. You've got money. And especially if you don't bring back Trey Hendrickson, that's another $25 million you don't got to dish out to Trey. So don't fall into the narrative that this team doesn't have money to spend on the defense this year, because they will. And if you don't, or if you do bring back Trey Hendrickson, then you likely aren't going to address the defensive line. So you still got money to spend at the safety position. So this team, don't get it twisted. They will have money to spend on the defensive line this year. You don't got to pay anybody. You just paid Ja'Marr. You just paid T. Higgins. And you've got, right now, I believe they're 9th in the NFL in total cap space. So they've got the money to spend on some of the guys.
If you're going to be cheap, just be cheap wisely. Like that. And I hate that we even have to have this conversation where it's like, okay, well, if you don't want to spend a lot of money, look, you'll get what you pay for. And also that goes with positional coaches as well. If you don't spend, look, sometimes you do have to spend top dollar to get top quality. And that's just where we're at. If you're gonna sit here and have these guys who are rookies or on 1-year contracts and you want to get the most out of them, you need to have guys in there who can squeeze the most out of them from the get-go. I don't think the position coaches that we have are gonna do justice as well.
You want to know the one thing that I know is unrealistic, but I just got to make mention of it on the show because I would kick myself if I didn't.
What, man?
So they came out with a report the other day. Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero, and 𝗏𝗏 guys I have a lot of respect for. They said apparently Brian Flores' contract with the Minnesota Vikings is up at the end of the season. And they're trying to bring him back, but obviously he's going to be a head coaching candidate. If you're going to keep Zach, I understand that Zach is all likelihood going to keep Al Golden. That's his guy that he chose to bring in, his hire, if you will. But a winning organization, objectively speaking, I would look at what Brian Flores has done with that defense, and many defenses he'd be a part of, and I'd say, I'm going after that guy aggressively, especially knowing that he's a free agent. We're not talking about the head coach. We're talking about as defense coordinator, but we know that's not possible. Why? Because that's too much of a threat to the throne. You bring in a guy like, Brian Flores, that you feel like you got a guy on your staff that probably could do your job maybe better than you. Maybe. I say maybe. I certainly think so. Probably not a likelihood. Let me just say this, guys, because I know it's easy to have the Zach Taylor conversation, and obviously I've had it at a nauseating pace, and I'm trying to look at it a little more positive.
Yeah, this shit depressing. Go ahead.
It's huh?
Say this shit's depressing. It really is.
Depressing?
Yeah.
Well, we've had the conversation a lot. For me, here's where I fall. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. If you're staying stagnant, you're getting worse. I find it weird, right? Even though Pittsburgh Steelers are in the playoff hunt, they're in the conversation that when the AFC, I find it weird that people kind of like, Scott, we know that, sir. I literally started the conversation by saying it's not going to happen, but if I was a winning organization, that's what I would do. But thank you for coming to the party. I say, I forgot. I lost my damn train of thought. What was I saying?
Zach Taylor.
We have this conversation so often.
Yeah. So we have this conversation, so often when it comes to Zach Taylor. So I'm trying to look at the positives to agree. I'm really struggling to find the positives, but the thing I land on, and the reason why I'm so hard pressed to make a move is because for me, I don't feel as if, how do I say this without coming off? I think it's very hard for me to look at Zach Taylor or Joe Burrow and be like, hey, you know what? Zach Taylor is definitely going to be the guy that breaks the trend of you can win, the first coach and quarterback duo to win a Super Bowl after their first Super Bowl after year 5. I struggle seeing that, especially doing the same thing over and over again. I understand that he's maturing. I understand that he's growing. I understand that he is probably, there's a part of it that there's a part of him that's probably still ironing out the kinks of this offense and finding little things that could work. I think that's where I get hung up on. I get hung up on he's going to be the guy to buck that trend. I get hung up on the fact that you have these games, you're an offensive-minded coach, but you have these games where you only put up 3 points. You have games where you put up absolute duds. That shouldn't be happening with one of the highest paid offenses in football. To me, there's just a lot that goes into it that just boggles my mind. That for me, talking you know, talking to players and being in the mix with things, you know, sometimes you got to know when to say when. But it's very clear that's not how they operate, right? Or reportedly operate. And obviously beating Miami Dolphins is, you know, that's going to be something that people are going to hang their head on and say, well, you know what? The offense put up 40 points and this is what it should look like. I don't know, man. It puts me in a weird situation. Daniel, I don't know how you feel about that. Tim, I don't know how you guys feel about it. But that's why I always come back for, because I can't discuss the things, you know, in a loss that I would, and then be willing to ignore them in a win. And to me, that's what it goes down to. What it comes down to.
Yeah, this shit it frustrates me because
you're a troll, Tim.
What's going on? What's going on? Somebody called your ass feisty.
Yeah. Listen, I don't know what this weird thing is. Can I just throw this out there too?
All right, what's up?
What's this weird shit that people have? Listen, y'all know me. I try to be very respectful. Scott, and I don't mean any disrespect, brother. I just think that it's one of those mornings where we're going back and forth. But like, brother, what does you being here up since the 80s mean? What does that mean, brother? I was born in 1995. I wasn't physically possible. It wasn't possible for me to cover this team in the 80s. But like, it's like this weird thing that we have where we just kind of like, I've been here since the 70s. I've been here since the 80s. New fans or new people that cover the team don't know what's going on. What are you like? Come on, can we stop this? We've all experienced the Zach Taylor era together. I was here. I remember the Marvin Lewis era for sure. I'm sorry, I don't remember
Sam White.
the Shula, the Sam White. I'm sorry, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. I won't pretend to remember that. But we got to stop this like grandstanding of weird stuff. It's not important. No one gives a fuck that I've been covering the NFL since 2014. No one cares that I've had a show for 4 years dedicated to the Bengals. No one cares about what I've done. Like, at the end of the day, we all want the same results, which is why we jump on the show and we talk about it. Brother, I've probably allocated, you know, my entire 20s, my entire life to covering the NFL, to covering this sport, to doing so much. But so I appreciate you, brother. I really, really do. I don't mean any disrespect by it, but you were being disrespectful by saying, welcome to the party, just saying I've been here. I'm sorry. That's just how I talk. I'm from Jersey, brother.
Guys, hug it out.
That's just, no. Ain't no hug it out. Ain't no hug it out. I'm from Jersey. So when I talk, and I've been told this before, Daniel's told me this before, they could tell you when I talk, I tend to be very, you know, very quick to the point. That's just how I am, sarcastic. That's how I promise you, I don't mean
disrespect by
any disrespect by it. Just where I'm from, how I speak. I'm still learning the Cincy.
We all need to be together in these tough times. I mean, look, where we're at, where I'm at with Zach, I never felt like Zach after, I want to say 2022, 2023, I was at the point with Zach where I was like, you know what? I think Zach might be holding Burrow back. You remember when Joe's radio went out and he had the drive against the Titans? Mm-hmm. That, in my head, originally right then and there, I thought Joe could call this fucking offense by himself. And I'm not gonna get there. Let me stop reading that.
Bro, like, don't you like that we have a show where we interact with people? Y'all make this show possible.
Y'all, because this shit would be boring.
Possible, man.
This shit would be boring.
It would be so boring if we didn't have live chats and we didn't like. That's why I could never do a podcast.
Motherfuckers didn't call me Gino. My dad started calling me that shit. I just want y'all to know, fuck y'all. That was crazy. Yeah, blow all this shit up. Like, quite frankly, the whole Zach experience, it's been cool and all of that. Now we have to look at the positives and say, you know, what can we do to change next year? Bro, we've been me, you, Dan, there's people on different shows, Goodberry, you know, all the way down to whoever you want to talk about, has said the same thing about what the problems have been with the Bengals. We know what the format is. We know what the issues are, and it's a list. But we can name them. That's the issue that I'm having, is that if we can name them, they can name them. So with Zach, it's been the same shit. You get the same result. Why are we having trouble with 2 top 10 receivers, and one of them is top 5 and not 5? And then to have you're just looking for a competent defense. You're just looking for somebody just to get us off, just to get, bro. Yes, I'm bothered by the Geno, bro. Just to get off the field every once in a while, give Joe back the ball every once in a while. That we're at a standstill with this shit. It's the same shit. I don't know what we're expecting, but it's going to be the same thing, I think.
And the part that I keep getting stuck on, and it's okay, but I think it was where like the expectations were higher, right? After they went to the Super Bowl, I was expecting, yo, this is the type of quarterback Burrow. He ain't gonna win 1. He ain't gonna win 2. This guy could win 3. He could win 4. And he can still do that. But as you start getting further along, you start prolonging the process to where it's like, is he gonna get 1? And that's where I think it's okay for fans. It's okay for us to have a quick trigger on certain things. And I think that's fair because this is the type of guy where you've got to go now. And yeah, we got a feisty group here today.
Listen, like,
bro, they calling us sassy. I think, bro, look, it's Monday morning, bro. Look, I know y'all don't act like you ain't over
sassy Santana.
You being sassy about him sitting here. You know what? Never mind.
Nah, go ahead,
bro.
Say what you gotta say.
Bro. Look, come on, y'all. Pick your battles.
You're our feisty Geno.
Stop fucking with me. I done had a bad year.
Well, listen, you want to hear something though? Like
what?
For the older fans, I have a huge respect for the folks that have endured and been a part of been in part since they spending their hard-earned money going to games, stuff like that for years. I think it gets to a point where you feel like you're not heard from the organization, right? And like, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if anybody's ever had nobody's really done a show in Cincinnati that wasn't connected to actually putting a mic in front of players' faces after games or press conferences. Like, obviously it's 2025, it's the day of social media, more folks are involved with doing content and stuff like that. But someone who has was been in the game, I would say, I don't want people to ever think that like I don't respect it, but I feel like sometimes people want my style of media to be indoctrined by their beliefs and how they've seen things go with the organization for years. And I just come from a different place where I have a never give up attitude. I have a never say quit mentality. And I'm not saying you guys are quitters. You guys have that mentality. I'm more so saying you got to beat my ass. I don't like where I'm from. Where I'm from, I gotta just keep going through it. I'm gonna keep fighting. I'm gonna keep promoting change. And you know what? My hope is, with me being like one of the first style of media people Cincinnati has had that's kind of done this and brought a New York style of media here. I hope that there's somebody that's gonna come after me or I can inspire somebody else. And I've gotten DMs from people who want to do media, stuff like that. And they say, really appreciate how you've done things and how you've changed. You sort of tried to change the culture here, whether it be doing interviews, sit down with players, or you've been unapologetically yourself. I really hope there's somebody else that's going to come up after me once I put the mic down for good and I'm like, I just want to focus on family, that does the exact same thing. That's how you keep this thing evolving, but you never settle. You never settle. Like that's my mentality. You never settle. You never get comfortable. I'll never forget a conversation I had when I first moved here to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And somebody said, your style of media will never work. And I'll never forget who the person is. I just don't want to give the person any.
You don't want to draw no name?
Nah, I'm good. Not that I have zero bound of respect for the dude, but he said, your style of media will never work. I've been doing this for 20 plus years, blah, 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 blah. And, you'll be flushed out soon. That's what he said. And so like when he said that to me, it stuck with me. And I was like, nah, y'all just get uncomfortable because you got people that will say the quiet part out loud. And I'm not tired. I think that's where it gets like where if players say to me, because by the way, I don't go through the organization for these interviews with players, just do contests. If players were like, yo, I don't want you to sit down with me because you was critical of me. Okay, next. I'm not moved by it. And just to be completely transparent with y'all, I've turned down interviews with Geno Stone. I turned down interviews with Logan Wilson. All in this year. I turned down interviews with Chase Brown, not because I don't want to sit down with them, but it has to make sense. It has to make sense, but I don't want to sit down with Geno, for instance, like his agent wanted me to. I didn't want to sit down with Geno and be like, I know how the fan base feel about him, how the fan base feel
facts, and
because I want his story to be told. You know what I mean? And I'm probably too close to the situation for a story to be told. But like it's a lot that goes into what we do. I just say this, like, my goal at the end of the day is to see the Bengals promote change, guys. Like, however that looks. However that looks. There's no ulterior motive. There's not, hey, let me talk like this because I want to be credentialed with the Bengals. There's none of that. I genuinely am just a dude with a company and a show who has a couple contacts around the NFL. At the end of the day,
we just want positive.
I just want change for the team. I want them to look at themselves inwardly, and my style of media will always try and promote that. That does not but guess what, guys? My style of media doesn't coincide with the regular style of media that folks are interested in, and that's okay. And I think that's where we clash. There's this journalistic point of view, and then there's the content creator point of view, and they just butt heads. And it's like, well, you're a content creator. Well, content creators is taking over the game now. I'm just being honest. They are taking over the game. There's always a place for journalists and their opinions and all 100%. But I don't take it as a slight like I used to. Remember, Dan? I used to take it as a slight, like, damn, call me a content creator. Like, no, I don't take it as a slight like I used to. I still appreciate y'all having your opinion because I think there's an avenue where all parties can coexist. And so I say all that to say, like, when I step on this show with a mic in my hand, I have all respect for people that have experienced what they've endured and dealt with everything they've done. But we can't get to the point where we're like, we want everybody to be silent. We want everybody to not speak up, because then that's how you don't get change. That's how you kind of get stagnant. And that's how you get to the point of where everybody just starts to move like somber and nobody's holding their organization's feet fire, because we all say that one thing that's easy, they're never going to change, you know?
Yeah. And speech, like, y'all, you know what's crazy is that this show has given me the opportunity and opened doors for me that honestly have been healing in a way, because sports is what kind of keeps my head afloat for, you know, majority of my life. If I didn't have it, I don't know where I would be. I went through a lot, and I don't even have enough time to talk about that. But what I'll say is, this show gives hope to hopeless romantics. Why I say that is because I think all of us as Bengals fans are hopeless romantics. You hope that you find the storybook happy ending. That's holding up a Lombardi. You hope that your morning or your week starts off good with the Bengals win and games being meaningful in December and January. Where we're at right now is, I think we're just grateful to have the game around. I think we're grateful to have our glorious King Joe Burrow healthy. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's just where I'm at. That's OC, but I don't care. We're at a point where you can look at it as pointing the finger and finding a bunch of ways to, you know, tell why this team isn't where they are. It's not really up to us. The front office, they already showed they don't care.
No, that's the mentality I'm trying to buck. That's the trend right there that I'm trying to buck.
I was going in a positive direction.
No, but you started off by saying that I got to push back on that, because I do think with enough pressure, anything will change. I don't care that what they've shown in the past. Like next year, like obviously we do a show every single week, multiple times, multiple shows a week. And then the off season hits, we go on a little break. We obviously go to the combine, we do our thing. Yeah. And then you're burnt out at the end of the season.
Yeah.
But guess what? Whatever happens, you're gonna hit the ground running again next year, saying, all right, back to square one. Here's how we can move forward. And maybe the Bengals go 14-0 starting next year, right? And we're looking up like, damn, okay, Bengals cooking. Maybe that's the case, right? The goal is to try and get there, right? The goal is to try to get there, and the goal is to sit on this show.
They ain't break me. They
go ahead. And you know what's crazy, when I started, and I flirted with the idea, like obviously I'll probably get back in the ring of breaking NFL news. Can't always guarantee it'll be Bengals stuff this offseason. I'll probably get back in the ring this year on free agency period, breaking news like I did last year. But at the end of the day, you know, so Scott said, how do we get them to change?
Right.
Appreciate you coming back to the stream, brother, because I want to make sure me and you are good.
But
I think that's a good question. How do we get them to change? I think continuously voicing our frustration is important. I know people don't like the fact that some people didn't like the fact that the billboard went up, but I think that's the kind of change that you need, right? I think that you need somebody that's going to continue to hold the feet to the fire. I think people having this type of show, having inside information with agents, players, whatever the case may be, even people in the organization that kind of know the inner workings of the organization, that kind of put their feet to the fire on things is important. I'm not trying to blow my own horn, but I think people like myself, people like, you know, Daniel, people like Goodberry, Jake Lisco, I think all of them are positive reinforcements of change that we need to see within the Bengals organization. And I think at the end of the day, how you get there is solely up to you. How you choose to voice your frustration. I don't have right. I'm not like the Wizard of Oz or something like that. I don't have a great oracle of what the future holds or how this thing could look. But I think voicing your displeasures, right, whatever that looks like for you, is the step in the right direction. I think that's how you promote change with anything. It's very clear that that's the standard has not been the standard, right?
Are we clear on what the standard is, though?
Well, the standard, yes. The Bengals came out themselves before and said our standard is winning championships. So anything that you do or don't do that's negatively contributing or contributing to that, you know, it is a topic of conversation. Every signing you make is going to be highly criticized. It's going to be heavily dissected. Because I think at the end of the day, that everyone wants a championship. So I don't think the organization has ever had this big of a spotlight on them and that big of a national spotlight on them as well because of who you have at quarterback and who you have as a receiver. It's not too many places you have the best receiver and best quarterback in the National Football League, but in Cincinnati, you have that. Maybe the Packers had that with Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers. But I think you have to continue to critique. I'm even discussing potentially even ramping up show. Maybe I'll do more shows in terms of dissecting every little move that they make, but I also don't want the message to grow stale. I want any single time we jump on this show for it to have meaning and stuff like that. I think you continue to speak out on social media because you got to realize in the 90s, they didn't have social media to combat them. Early 2000s, they didn't have social media to combat them. Now they've got social media to combat them. They get the backlash. They get all of that they see it all. That's the reason why Blackburn, the younger girl, she came in and she said, hey, you know, she was in charge of the fan engagement and all that stuff because they were trying to repair their image amongst Bengals fans. It's the reason why they reached out to content creators to change the image of Bengals fans. I remember it was me, Yaz, Zim, Ace, Joe, Goodberry. They reached out to all of us and they said, hey, we want y'all to help promote the Jaguars game and stuff like that. Like there's so they do care about the image. I just think that they kind of got too big for their britches. I think going to the Super Bowl, going to the AFC Championship made them think, oh, we don't need those people anymore. We don't need to worry about our image because we have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and folks are just going to fall in line. And that couldn't be further from the truth, guys. That cannot be further from the truth. At the end of the day, people want to root for a winning football team. All right? People want to root for a winning football team. People want change. People want better. And how do you do that? You continuously hold their feet to the fire. You praise the accolades, but you also dissect everything, the things that went wrong, the things that went right. That is how you get to where you're going. I say all this because 169 people are watching the show live right now. We cannot do it without y'all. Y'all coming on the show, you guys putting your comments, you guys voicing all this. They keep in tune with what's going on. They trust me, they do. It's important. Any business cares about their image. Mm-hmm. Any person, to a degree.
You said Katie walked up to you.
Yeah, she came. That's the young girl's name, right? Is it Elizabeth or Katie? Elizabeth. Elizabeth
came up to you.
She came to our suite in New York. She did. At the end of the day, it's not a one-person job. But even that doesn't mean anything, right? Saying, hey, I'm a fan of your work. Yeah, you guys are a little hard on us sometimes. That don't mean anything.
So I know you're watching.
Yeah. Well, I know that already. That's why I usually say on the show, I know people listen to the book because I know that already. Because they do care about their image. Like when I came to Cincinnati, it was like, oh shit, he's not an outsider anymore. He's not a guy that's showing up on a little square box doing virtual shows. No, now I'm here. Now I'm here. At the end of the day, I want what's best for the Bengals organization. And, you know, obviously my company stands by new media and all that stuff like that. I ain't gonna lie. I know one of the first things the media is to say, never say you're a fan. Well, I think that's bullshit. You know, everybody is a fan of sports. There are people on the Bengals beat who are fans of the Bengals, but they can't outright say that because they think somehow that minimizes their credibility. I'm very open, very honest. I don't have a reason to chuck and jive you. I root for the Bengals. I have rooted for the Bengals my entire life. Being a man in New Jersey, I've rooted for the Cincinnati Bengals. All my friends were Giants fans and they were hoisting Lombardi trophies. I rooted for the Bengals. I endured it. Trust, I did. And so I say all that. I remember making that 9-hour, 10-hour drive from Jersey to Cincinnati and we broke down cars. Remember that, Daniel? Mm-hmm. We all want the same thing. I just happen now to be in NFL media space. and credentialed with the NFL and have a company with some great writers and some great people. So now I get to just
Talk ball.
Talk ball, and maybe it holds a little more weight than it used to.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, the goal here is to always bring a championship to Cincinnati. It should always be to raise the standard. And you don't do that by falling in line. You do that by standing out. You do that by calling for change. You do that by wanting better, not just for the here and now, but for the future of this team. I think we are in a very, very important part. I think we're in a very, very important time right now for the Bengals. I really do. I think that the message has been heard. I think the message will continue to be heard throughout the offseason. Loud and clear. This fan base needs a winner. This fan base deserves a winner. And 5 wins with 2 weeks left in the season is not the standard. It's not the standard. It's not the standard. I know if it were me, I'd make changes.
Yeah.
But again, Malik, maybe there's something that they see that you don't see, and that's completely fine. Again, I've never acted like I know it all. But what I will tell you, what I've seen is I've seen winning cultures. I've seen teams turn it around because they have a desire to win. They are allergic to coming in second. Because if you're not first, you're last. And if the Bengals want to get where they want to go, if the Bengals want to bring a championship to Cincinnati, they have to look inward this offseason. They have to ask themselves, is Zac Taylor the man going forward? They have to ask themselves, are we doing everything in our power to protect and keep Joe Burrow healthy? Give him his best chance at a championship. That is what winning organizations do. And if you fall on the sort of, this guy is not the answer, or this thing might need change, well, you're doomed. Because I think right now you're in the same conversation with Lou that you were with Al Golden. The only difference was the defense finished a little bit better last year. And, well, young players are playing now this year. But the results have been what they've been. But you want to see growth. You want to see growth. I don't think I've seen this wild change improvement from the defense to the point where it's like nothing can be off the table.
But you can fix it.
I think looking at Zac Taylor as the head coach of this football team and judging him solely on that is what's needed. Not as an offensive play caller, but as the head coach of the football team. Are we going up or are we going down? That's a real conversation. To me, that's where it starts and that's where it ends. And it always has. But if we're not having that conversation, well, what conversations are we willing to have? What conversations are we willing to have with ourselves? What conversation are we willing to have looking inward? Because there's got to be something. Someone's got to answer for this. And I'm sorry, a couple of measly position coaches isn't enough. Someone has to answer for this. Or maybe if no one answers for it, what change are you planning to implement? Maybe it's a more aggressive and free agency strategy. Well, you already said you were going to do that. Y'all put out a video package saying you guys were going to attack, the offseason ferociously with a championship mindset. Remember that little video package you guys put out? You didn't do so. You signed your own, which you expected to do, and you brought in TJ Slaton. Mm-hmm. What other move did you make? You brought in a lot of other guys later in the season. To me, if you are committed to change, if you're committed to bringing a championship to Cincinnati, things need to change. The mentality has to change. And you need to pull out all the stops to make sure that next year, right, is undoubtedly resulting in y'all in the playoffs. That's where the mentality has to be. That is how you implement a championship level culture. I haven't heard Zac Taylor mention culture in a while. What is the culture, Zach? If you're to be the lead man next year, what is the culture? I want to hear from you. What is this culture? Because guess what? I think right now more than ever, you need something to fall back on if you are to be the head man next year, if you are to get these players to believe in you. What's the culture? Daniel?
Yeah, man. This is it's weird being at the spot, and it's weird accepting this as a lost season because, that's our job is always to say, how can this team make a Super Bowl? How can this team do it? And there ain't no realistic shot you're going to be in the Super Bowl until 365 days at least from now. So all we can do is kind of analyze for this offseason. And it's fun. I like analyzing free agents. I like analyzing draft picks. it just sucks that they're in the spot, and especially with the news potentially that the head coach is probably going to stay. So I thought you hit the nail on the head, Malik, and I think that this is, and somebody said it best of discussing, it was Chris 727. He said, we could easily never get another Joe. They have to feel this. That's where I'm at. You don't know what you got until it's gone. And Joe Burrow is probably going to be here for a long time. You can't operate that way because you never know if you're going to have a superstar quarterback like him again. And that's the truth. Look around the league. How many teams got a Joe Burrow? Maybe 3 teams got a player of his caliber. The rest are trying to get to that point. And the worst thing in life is wasted potential, and you don't want this to be wasted potential. So that's where I'm at with this. And we'll see how this offseason goes. Like I said, I'm excited to talk about it all. At this point, it is what it is. Let the boys have some fun. Let Burrow and Ja'Marr and T cook, and you hope to keep them in high spirits heading into this offseason. And let's enter free agency, and let's hope that they actually attack this thing. That's where I'm at.
I keep trying to find a positive way to think about how next season could just be different. And the only thing that keeps popping up in my head is, just as me having played the game, your head coach is such a huge portion, not just from the X's and O's, but and this is the time of the year to reflect, honestly. I think that's what we've all done sitting up here today, is just, and you at home watching, which I appreciate y'all reflecting with us, is how different do you want this to necessarily look if you are the front office? If you're Zach, do you come in here with a different mentality? Because, you know, there's some people who try to add that moxie to them. You either have it or you don't. And I know leading a team out of the tunnel, you know, talking to guys and inspiring them is such a huge portion, because this game is built off of momentum. This game is built off of drive, grit, the ability to pull something out of you that you didn't know you had. And I'm not trying to be negative when I say it, but that's just not something that you get out of Zach. And these press conferences, we can't have these next year. You can't not be accountable and take certain L's on the chin. You can't sit here and not be okay with people putting your feet to the fire and getting, as in the wise words of Chris, you know, feisty. You can't get feisty. You can't sit there and say, I have a brick wall built around me. This game is made for entertainment. Yes, these are guys' lives who, you know, put their bodies on the line each and every day. They go out there with the possibility of dying for a large, you know, number to hit their bank account. But it's not about that. It's about the passion and the fan base and what you give them each Sunday when you strap on your pads. You go out there to show your face and your skills that you've worked so hard on the course of months prior to the season to put on display, to increase the chance of getting it back. And guess what? Without impressing the fans, you don't necessarily get that dollar bill.
Yeah.
And that are we at a point with Zach where we can feel like, okay, if we don't spend a large amount, here's the two things that are going to be the tellers of this offseason. One, do you actually draft guys who have the production to match the name? Or are you going off of the high teens pick, which is basically what we're going to get? Because if I'm correct, we possibly could be sitting here 7-10 at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And talking about being in that 20s area and hoping that somebody falls in our lap. That's number one. Are you going to have the right coaches in place to sit here and take a guy who's from college and is going to endure an 18-game season? Number two, how much money are you willing to spend to put a quality product on the field? I'm tired of losing. I don't like losing. I lose enough outside of football. So
you want to know what the hope is? You talked about hope. You're trying to find hope.
Yeah,
this is the Bengals mentality, I can assure you. Oh, we know how good of a football team we can be with Joe Burrow.
Right.
Let's keep Joe Burrow healthy. Let's run it back. And let's see if, you know, Because we believe that we have a fighting chance, playoff chance with Joe Burrow, a full healthy Joe Burrow season. That's the mentality. And that's the one thing they're hanging their hopes on. They're saying, hey, look at the Buffalo Bills game. We played them tough. We almost beat them. Obviously, if it wasn't for the errant mistakes at the end, we were the better team for the majority of the day, right? Look at the Miami Dolphins game. This is what it could look like. This is what you guys paid to see. That is their calling card. I expect a huge video package to come out at the end of the season talking about Joe Burrow being fully healthy and the king of the North and all this stuff like that. And he's going to take back the throne next year. I fully expect that is going to be their selling point. The part that I hope doesn't get missed in this is, well, we also have work to do for agency. We also have work to do via draft. And to Tim's point, not drafting developmental picks. You're clearly at a state where you can't draft guys that have potential. You can't draft. You got to draft guys that have the production that has and is shown in the college, not just guys that have the quote unquote intangibles. It's very clear that you guys are not at a point from a roster construction or roster build standpoint that you can take these big swings. So the hope is the organization changes the mentality and really goes into this off season attacking it quite like no other. You need to have the mentality you had in 2020 and 2021. Add outside free agents. And hope for the best. I think that's the mentality. That's what you got to do. But listen, we want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Sit Down Morning Show with Malik Wright. Again, there will be no show for the remainder of this week. Obviously, it is Christmas. We want you guys to spend your time with your family. There'll be no State of the Jungle. There will be no Sit Down Morning Show on Thursday or Friday. We just want y'all to have an amazing time with your family this week. We appreciate you guys for being our family and spending your holidays with us, your weeks with us, and so much more. Again, you guys make this show possible. You guys make me smile when I do the show each and every single week, each and every single day. I know it'll be a little bit of a hiatus, but I'll be looking forward to coming back here, trading barbs with my guys, Tim and obviously Daniel.
Appreciate you guys.
But we want to wish you and yours such a happy holidays. And thank y'all, seriously, for the bottom of our hearts, for going through this with us, dissecting all the ins and outs of Bengals football with us. We'll be back next week. We'll be back next week, and we'll be back to discuss all the happenings around the National Football League. Wishing the absolute best for you and yours this holiday season. And remember, there's only one way you should be waking up, talking sports, having that cup of coffee, and that is the right way. We'll see you guys next Monday, everybody.
This